Buying used cars right now is absolutely absurd. Prices are sky high on everything. Powerful cars, expensive. Economic cars, expensive. Trucks, expensive. It's like everything is being taxed right now, and it makes it so hard to buy a fun car for a realistically reasonable amount of money, right? Like, I just can't justify going out and paying $15,000 for a car that was worth 8 grand 10 months ago.
I must be missing something basic, but I'm out.
It probably will be worth 8 grand again in another 10 months. And I don't know about you guys, but I can't afford to just go throw away thousands of dollars. So like any other rational and sane person, I spend every waking moment of free time that I can squeeze out of my day, and I do nonstop research until I can come up with a list of cars that I can justify spending my hard-earned money on. And then I can take my findings and make them life-changing public information, just like any other super important scientific research expert would do, right? All right, enough intro. Stick around for the end of the video because this last one's gonna blow your freaking mind. Subscribe, hit the bell, like, share, wheels, tires, suspension, fitmentindustries.com. Let's get into it. Now, first up is admittedly a bit of a dicey one, because one fantastic way to get into a turbocharged, manual transmission, German-engineered Autobahn destroyer that also gets 50 miles per gallon is to get into a Dieselgate Volkswagen Jetta or Golf TDI. If you're looking for the best daily driver you can possibly buy, you really can't go wrong here. No, you're not gonna win any races against any real sports cars, but a tuned and deleted TDI is a lot of fun. It does it reliably, it gets crazy miles per gallon, and probably my favorite part, because of the whole Dieselgate buyback debacle, these cars haven't really changed much price-wise over the last couple of years, which is awesome because that means you guys get to capitalize in a seller's market, and these cars do still hold their value very, very well, and you could really own one of these for pretty damn near free if you play your cards right.
And at the end of the day, you still have a Jetta, so you just go and slap a set of BC Racing coilovers and some rotoforms on this bad boy, and you've got the best looking daily driver around.
S197. You goddamn Skippy, there's a Mustang on this list, because if there's one thing in this world that skips out on hyperinflation, it's retro futuristic designs made with shitty quality materials. Think Chrysler PT Cruiser, Chevrolet SSR, Plymouth Prowler, etc. Now, personally, I love this generation of Mustang and how it looks. It just sucks that it's a bit underpowered with only 300 horsepower, which would normally be enough, but it's kind of heavy. It handles like a wet noodle. It only has 5 gears and a pretty open differential. But because of all this, you can still go buy a 300 horsepower V8 pony car with a clutch pedal for 6 to 8 grand. And they've been 6 to 8 grand for years. They're right at that awkward age where they're pretty much worthless. So they sit in limbo even in an aggressive market like we have today. But don't let the lackluster power, handling, and looks fool you. They're honestly great vehicles. The 4.6 is essentially a big stupid truck engine, so it's pretty damn reliable. It doesn't make enough torque to break anything. It's not fast enough to need huge brakes to stop. It's semi-efficient and it's really cheap. I mean, you can literally go make this thing look like anything you want. This is one of the most modified vehicles in the world. If you can get over the fact that you might get made fun of for driving a Mustang, this is
Probably one of the best values on this list. Imagine this for a second.
A 260 horsepower, turbocharged 2-liter, 6-speed manual sport compact with factory launch control. And a ton of potential to make big traction inhibiting front wheel drive power. Chevrolet Cobalt SS turbocharged is the boosted Civic Si that we always wish we had.
For starters, it's a tiny car with
260 horsepower. Now I know maybe it doesn't sound like a ton, but out of the box, it's a really good amount for a front wheel drive sport compact. I mean, you're talking about Focus ST performance for half the money and without any of the inflation. Sure, it still looks, sounds, and feels like a Cobalt, and that's why they're so damn cheap and skipped out on the big dumb price bubble. And you should be jumping for joy because of it, because these cars genuinely do have a lot of potential. Get the right couple of bolt-ons, some coilovers, and a nice tie-in, you're gonna be keeping up with a lot more expensive stuff around the track. So if you can get over the whole, front wheel drive thing, this is a bargain sport compact tire slayer. But if value isn't quite your thing and you'd like to trade off a bit of that reliability for a little bit more horsepower and a little bit greater potential for horsepower overall, then this car might be the one for you. Because this one has 2 turbochargers connected to a 3-liter inline 6-cylinder engine. That's not a Toyota project, or at least it wasn't when they came out, but it kind of is now. The E90, E92 BMW 335, or I guess even the 135s, anything like that, is a freight train of an automobile for the money. For 8 to 12 grand, you can go get yourself a really decent, well-maintained 335i in your choice of coupe, sedan, manual, automatic, rear-wheel drive, or all-wheel drive, in any combination of any of those. which is pretty cool actually at the end of the day. Side note, don't sleep on the automatics. They can take a lot of abuse. If you're gonna be drag racing these things, making a bunch of power, I might recommend the automatic more if you can. But here's the deal. These cars were fairly advanced for their time and they were extremely popular, which means there's a ton of these things around and they have a few rather expensive common issues like turbo failure. Labor to rebuild 2 turbos comes with a decent sized build. These cars are direct injected as well, so carbon cleaning's gonna be a thing. This era hasn't aged well with interior quality either, but it's not as bad as maybe, say, the Mustang. As far as the mass market goes, those are usually kind of deal breakers, and that's where us enthusiasts kind of swoop in and grab the deals. Look, there's enough of these around that you could pretty much do anything yourself with a step-by-step tutorial online. If you're the slightest bit mechanically inclined and looking for the fastest car with the most power potential while still sneaking under that inflation bubble, the 335 is gonna be really hard to beat. But now let's say you're maybe, feeling a little bit greedy, a little bit extra thrifty. You don't want to just save money, you want to make money.
I like money.
Well, get out that pen and notepad, buds, because this is about to get serious. Now, in order to make a prediction like this, you really have to dig deep.
You got to do your research, find patterns, and then from there, it's really just educated gambling at that point. Let's be real.
Right now, we're approaching the explosion of JDM superstardom.
The big legendary couple of cars are already screaming upward in value, but what follows after that? The next best in line. That's what. When the Mark IV Supra becomes real big baller money, you're gonna start to see your Mark III Supras get in on that come up. You're talking about a nameplate with tons of heritage. It's the next best looking to the Mark IV, and the older does still make it susceptible to be a real superstar.
Even if it won't be a legend like the Mark IV. Anyway, patterns. I've noticed that right in that 25 to 35-year-old mark
is right when you kind of want to jump in on these trends, and towards that 35 to 40-year-old mark is when these things really start to turn around and take a neat car and turn it into a real collector. This age is also the reason I think these avoided the inflation bubble that you see with most of the other cars these days. It's simply too old to be consumed by the mass market and not quite old enough to be in full collector mode just yet.
The Mark III is the perfect example of being in the right place at the right time. It's the right age, and it's a great time to buy. Its younger brothers have the fame, and its older brothers have the heritage. The Mark III has that delicious, boxy 80s charm. It has a very potent, for its era, 230 horsepower turbocharged 7M GTE powering this bad boy, and it has a really cool engine layout. This is really sort of the beginning of the boosted inline 6 horsepower wars, and the Mark III was my first time ever hearing a big single turbo inline 6 roll up into a rolling burnout in front of me and changed my life forever. They look great, they had a huge impact during their generation. If you can handle owning a 35-year-old turbo tuner Supra, you're probably gonna be the best off long-term, so long as you don't end up with a shitbox. And so with that, the last on this list checks all the collector boxes. It's just ever so slightly older than the Mark III, so it's subject to the same theoretical collectability. Still seems to be holding under that inflation line, but just barely hanging on there. The FC generation Mazda RX-7 Turbo 2 is probably the safest car to sink your money into right now. It's at the perfect age. It represents an era of time that's easily distinguished. It was just upscale enough to have everyone dreaming and just barely affordable enough to make it realistic. It was a fantastic looking and driving car that was just unconventional enough to grab and hold people's attention. This was a sports car for the real enthusiasts who wanted to step out of the box, and still sort of seemed to be the case to this day. But none of that matters. What matters is you can buy a piece of 80s JDM boosted sports car history without paying some sort of nonsensical market tax, which is going to set you up for long-term success, because losing money on a car, straight up nonsense. And you don't have to do it as long as you play your cards right. So I hope letting you guys in on my super secret list of affordable cars doesn't inflate the prices of these cars specifically, and if they do, I'm sorry. You can blame Dakota. He found my auto market notebook and keeps making me publicize my lists and ruining all of my strategies. And remember to subscribe and click that bell to stay up to date with all the crazy stuff we're doing, like, oh geez, I don't know, giving away a whole S2000 and $10,000, or having crazy month-long Black Friday deals and cutting up artisan wheel to make Franken wheel. Look, you're not gonna wanna miss it. I'm Sean, Sean B. on Instagram. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.